The Old Testament reading comes from Deuteronomy chapter 26, 1 through 11, and the topic is first fruits and tithes. When you have entered that land to the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance and have taken possession of it and settled in it, take some of the first fruits of all that you produce from the soil of the land the Lord your God is giving you, and put them in a basket. Then go to the place the Lord your God will choose as a dwelling for his name, and say to the priest in office at the time, I declare today to the Lord your God that I have come to the land the Lord swore to our ancestors to give us. The priest shall take the basket from your hands and set it down in front of the altar of the Lord your God. Then you shall declare before the Lord your God, my father was a wandering Aramean, and he went down into Egypt with a few people and lived there and became a great nation, powerful and numerous. But the Egyptians mistreated us and made us suffer, subjecting us to harsh labor. Then we cried out to the Lord, the God of our ancestors, and the Lord heard our voice and saw our misery, toil, and oppression. So the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, with great terror and with signs and wonder. He brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And now I bring the first fruits of the soil that you, Lord, have given me. Place the basket before the Lord your God and bow down before him. Then you and the Levites and the foreigners residing among you shall rejoice in all the good things that the Lord your God has given to you and your household.
Our gospel lesson comes from the 17th chapter of Luke's gospel, the 11th through the 19th verses. Listen now to God's word for us. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. When he saw them, he said to them, Go and show yourselves to the priests. And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner? Then he said to him, Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Last week, we talked a little about prayer, about asking, Lord, what is it that you want to do through me? I told you I wouldn't consider prayer one of my spiritual gifts. A lot of time, I kind of think I'm covering ground that's already been trod. This week, we're talking about gratitude. Honestly, I think I do okay at this, at least compared to prayer, because those are related. You see, the bulk of my prayers end up being a litany of the blessings that I've been given by God, recognizing the gifts we have do come from God, and they're to be used for God's glory. Honestly, there are so many things to be grateful for. You can look around at any time. It kind of takes up so much of my prayer that I kind of travel down that rabbit trail and forget the other things I might talk to God about. One thing just leads to another because they're all connected, right? It's part of realizing who I am. You see, all of that is part of the same story. My story. I don't read a whole lot of fiction, but I do like the fact you can get books on your Kindle for free from the library. I don't take much time to read stories. I have enough to read already, but on vacation. I always try to read on vacation. So in anticipation for my summer vacation, back in May, I put on hold a couple Kindle books. 6 months later, This week, I was notified that they are now mine to check out, and I have 2 weeks to read them. It's not exactly ideal timing for summer vacation, but I went hunting the other day, and I managed to read an entire book while sitting in a tree. Obviously, the deer were safe. Now, this book was a slow starter, to be honest. It got me thinking about what it is that makes a story worth reading. What is it that gets our attention and makes us want to know more? The elements of a good story always include a main character that the listener, the reader, cares about. Love him or hate him, you care what happens to him. If you don't care about them, you don't care about their story. If someone can get you to care about a character, well, then you care about the story. And to be honest, that's how it works in real life, too. I was thinking about how over the years I've interviewed a number of candidates for jobs, and almost universally, you just sort of know by feeling if someone is right for a job. But it's not just feeling. I think it's seeing where you fit in the story of someone's life. Do they want a job, any job, or do they see where this work can become part of who they are? Why did you apply for this job? I needed one is never that impressive. But what is impressive is when someone can see how your stories intersect. I think I'm really good at this, or I would be good at this if I had a shot, and I really think I have a lot to offer because I love this stuff. Or you're doing some things where I think I could feel really useful. If you make me care about your story, well, I care about you. Of course, the Bible is filled with stories. The story of the people of Israel fills the Old Testament. There are rules and regulations that start piling up in the first few books, so much so that you can start to lose the forest for the trees. But there's a story. And Moses reminds the people of that story. He explains why the people are bringing their first fruits to God. It's part of his last speech to the people. 6 chapters of Deuteronomy, the same one where he prepares the people to receive Joshua as their leader. He talks of Abraham, the wandering Aramean, who finds a home in Egypt. But the people are mistreated and enslaved, and eventually they're led out of Egypt, and at that moment sit on the very cusp of the promised land, the hope that they have held for so long. And he tells them, the first thing they need to do when they finally reap a harvest that's been a long time coming is to be thankful to God. Because while not every episode in the story was sunshine and roses, the story is what got them there today, and where God has worked out his marvelous plan in their lives. It's their story, who they are. And because of that story, they're grateful. God has seen them through the desert and is living and active, and their response is thanksgiving. What else makes a good story? Now, a story that engages me, I know, is one with a hook, right? Some point where what is expected to happen doesn't. Some moment where the world around us has changed even slightly, that sets everything anew and causes us to perk up our ears for discovery and intrigue and revelation. Without that, it's flat. It's a story that moves along, but it doesn't go anywhere. Now, Jesus is amazing with stories. The Gospels are filled with parables and teaching that bring home a point to the ones that are hearing and even the ones who are reading them 2,000 years after the fact. His stories have an aha moment. Healing, teaching, a moment of challenge. Jesus usually gives us, or somebody, something to change their life. So what is this story about? Well, you might say it's about the healing of the lepers, which is true, of course. But we know the real story is the difference between the 9 who continued on their way and the one who gave thanks for the healing, right? See, they're actually 2 separate stories in a way. There's a parallelism at work. It's kind of neat. There's the story of the 10 and the story of the 1. Each story starts with an approach to Jesus, and then they head in drastically different directions. The 10 come to Jesus, they keep their distance, they lament, they call out for mercy. Jesus sends the 10 away, and the 10 are cleansed. That's a decent story. Then the one turns back, which is a clue, right? Because in the Bible and in any book, turning back, it's a big deal. He turns back and he approaches Jesus. He kneels at Jesus' feet. He praises God and thanks Jesus. Jesus sends him away and he is made well. It's a good story too. Similar, but you put them next to each other. The 10 come to Jesus, the 1 comes to Jesus. The 10 keep their distance. The 1 comes right up and kneels at Jesus' feet. The 10 complain and beg. The 1 praises God and thanks Jesus. Jesus sends the 10 away. Jesus sends the 1 away. The 10 are cleansed. The 1 is made well. There's the difference. The last thing, like most stories, being the most important. The 9 are cured, but only 1 is healed. The Greek words are different. 9 are made clean. They weren't lepers anymore, but only 1 was not just made clean, but made whole. It's the same word you see in other places translated as saved. It's his faith that made him so. That's what Jesus said. And so what is that faith? What are the differences between this guy and the rest of them? 10 keep their distance, and 1 comes near. 10 walk away having gotten what they came for, and 1, having gotten what he came for, gives thanks, turns back, and receives so much more. That's the difference. That's a saving faith that recognizes the blessing from God is not a given. It's a recognition that all good gifts, big and small, are sent from God and are worthy of giving God thanks. Because it's not in receiving the benefits of God that we are set apart. Because all 10 received benefits. But by recognizing where they've come from, we complete the relationship that God truly desires with us, and that's the reason to give thanks. See, it's really not that complicated. The basic Christian response to God is gratitude. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Gratitude for the gift of life, gratitude for the world, gratitude for the dear people God has given us to enrich our lives with grace. The basic Christian experience is gratitude to God for God's love in Jesus Christ. That's the common denominator. And so, if that's the basic Christian experience, then, if that's what we all have in common, what's your story? What is it about you that makes you who you are? Easy answers, right? Your family, your job, your home. How about you're grateful? And what for? Today is Gratitude Sunday. It's an opportunity to put into words just what it is that we are grateful to God for in our lives and in our community. Now, you'll notice in your bulletin, there is a section that's perforated. You may not see it at first, but I promise you it's there. During the offertory, I want not only for you to listen and think and pray, but take a minute to think on the question written there. To write down one thing on the perforated portion of the bulletin, and then, during the final hymn, bring that part of your bulletin forward and place it in the basket with those of the others here today, just as Moses told his people to bring their offering in a basket. You can proceed down the center aisle and return down the sides. If it's difficult for you to do so, just hand your sheet to a neighbor. I'm sure that they would be glad to take yours along with theirs. Again, we'll come forward during the last hymn. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. I'm not done. So give me just a minute. 2 weeks ago, we talked about meeting one another as Jesus met blind Bartimaeus from a posture of service, asking, "How can I help you?" Last week, we took that challenge one more step, that we might ask the same question of God. Lord, what is it that you want to do through me? How can I help you? This week, I want you not just to think about your story, what got you to where you are today, who you really are inside, but I want you to realize how deeply you've been blessed. I want you to speak that blessing out into the world every day and invite one another into relationship where you begin to learn one another's stories. There's an easy way to do this. When we hear the question, "How are you?" Anybody ever been asked, "How are you?" If not every day. We could answer, "I am thankful." Are you? Would you tell me what you are thankful for? Now that's a way to really find out how someone is. Beginning and ending with an attitude of gratitude for the grace given to us in Jesus Christ, it's one more way to change the world, to become more and more what God would have us be. How can I help you? Lord, what do you want to do through me? And what are you thankful for? I want to practice that because I want to be grateful. And I want to offer what I have to God out of gratitude. So much so that if someone were to ask me not just, "How are you?" but "Who are you?" instead of listing where I live and what I do, I could simply tell them exactly who I am. I am saved and I am grateful. That's my story. Amen.